Hello and welcome to Breach Build Guides Part 2. I just want to point out, just like in the previous build guide video, this can be looked at as a guideline. You don't need to copy this all one for one, including the item choice, the exact enchantments, and the attribute distribution. I use a lot of purple items here because 1, they can roll a lot of different modifiers to blue items, and 2, they can roll a higher maximum on the enchantments as well. They come with downsides, but we can easily counter them, and I'll explain per build. Also, if people didn't know, there are groupings within the enchantment system. This means that you can't roll 2 damage enchantments on the same weapon. So if you have rune damage, then you can't roll an elemental infusion, for example. Remember to keep your weapons and armor upgraded as much as you possibly can. Don't waste your embers on random items, and let's get started. So the first build we're going to be looking at is Daggers and Gauntlets at the same time. This is my personal favourite playstyle. This guide is applicable for either, as they almost have an identical playstyle. Some things before going into specifics here, feel free to use any dagger or gauntlet of your choice. Any dagger really works, but ideally for gauntlets, you'd want to run with one of the faster hitting gauntlets for this build. So Ryback Claws, Gossamer Gauntlets, or Kirsten Guise. Some of these are sold by Alaria, so be sure to upgrade her. For the dagger, I'm personally running with Rogue Messer, which is just a random tier 2 drop. But you can keep making realms over and over again, get to Fillmore in the fortress, and buy a Brother's Keeper's daggers from him to try hit a plagued set of daggers. I will say though, try to get a really high focus roll on your weapon for this build. The number beneath the runes that says gain, and then the number of focus, really does matter. If you get a low roll, it isn't the end of the world, but it will help with the build. 3 is the minimum focus gain for daggers and gauntlets, while 5 is the highest. Alright, let's take a look at the build properly. There are a few variations of this that I want to show off first. The things we're going to be building around is focus gain and shock, but you can also choose to build around lifesteal, which I actually recommend. Put a blood gem in your weapon for lifesteal, then either get an electric infusion on your weapon, or use the electric enchantment rune from Eleanor. If you choose to use the electric damage infusion enchantment on your weapon, you cannot get any other damage enchantments due to the enchantments sharing a grouping, as I mentioned in the intro. Once you've decided what you're doing for that part of the weapon, then for the rest of the enchantments we're looking for focus on kill, and health on kill or health on fatality. You can also forego the health on fatality and get stamina regen, healing increased, or movement speed after rune attack. Then, as you'll see in a common theme throughout this video, I'm using the indestructible and unrepairable combo. For the runes on the daggers, we're using Lightning Claw as our main damaging rune. This is an amazing rune, so try to get this if you can. You can get this from the Ash Soothed daggers, whose recipe is sold by level 3 Eleanor. Otherwise, I would just use the Jewel Breaker rune from Brother's Keepers. We have Throw Axe to activate the attack damage increase after rune attack, but if you're not using this enchantment and you decided to go for lifesteal and the electric infusion, then don't worry about this, just put whatever you want in here. And we also have a channel and damage surge setup to pre-buff. For the runes on the gauntlets, we're using Spirit Burst for our main damaging rune. It's great because it's a ranged option that's 50 cost, but also deals great damage. Tempest Kick is our alternative damaging rune. It does tons of poise damage if you can get every hit off on the enemy. And then again, we're just using a channel and damage surge setup. For the rest of the armor, I'm running 3 pieces of leather, 1 mesh. This really doesn't matter that much though. You can use whatever weight class of armor that you want, as long as it's not like full plate, because the amount of equip load points it would take. For the helm, I'm not sure about the math on it if you actually need the quartz gem for build up. I would say that you probably don't. I would actually put a topaz in here instead for more focus gain, or whatever else you want really. Electric damage and focus on inflicting build up are the 2 primary things we want here. Then damage taken decrease is great as well, and then we have the indestructible unrepairable combo. For the armor, a black pearl for the gem, gives healing for lifesteal, it's pretty good. You could also use a shield emblem for less physical damage, a marble for increased health, or anything else you want really. Focus gain and overall speed after inflicting shock are the 2 main enchantments we want to look for here. Damage taken reduced is obviously amazing as well, and then max health increased by % of max focus is giving me about 22 HP, so it's pretty decent, but not necessary. You can also look for stamina regeneration, +1 hunger, or the indestructible unrepairable combo. For the gloves, we have a quartz for the shock buildup, but as I mentioned with the helm, I don't really know if this is necessary. I would probably instead put a blood gem here for big regain health. A Dianite would also be really good for focus cost reduction. We're looking for shock build-up and focus gain for the enchantments. I know I just said shock build-up for the gem wasn't necessary, but the enchantment itself can roll quite a big number, so I would still definitely get this. Damage taken reduced, you can see a theme with all this gear here, and then for the downside we have max focus decreased. You can always take one of these without it impacting your character too much, but also feel free to do the unrepairable indestructible combo as well. For the pants, the gem is really interchangeable here. I just have an emerald because it has one of those higher rolls when you put it in pants specifically, but you can put whatever you want here. A black pearl for healing or a marble for health, anything really works here. And then for the enchants, we're looking for focus gain and damage taken decreased. Damage increased after dodge is a bonus, and then we're using the indestructible unrepairable combo. For the rings, there's a lot that's really useful for this build. Some builds only have like 3 rings total that are usable, but for this build you can make a lot of different things work. Right now I'm using a band of calmness for more focus and focus gain, a jade ring because I have 0 points in stamina, so that just keeps me going because these weapons have multiple hits per attack, so you're getting a lot of stamina back per attack. And then we also have the willow cap ring. It just feels so good to have high attack and movement speed, but you can easily trade this one out if you don't have one for a stone tusk ring or a crow ring, or even some of the unique rings if you want to build around scarlet ring or serendipity ring. You can also trade out the jade ring, but you will probably have to either use a crow ring or put more points into stamina as well. You can see my attributes on the right. We don't really have much HP in this build compared to other builds, but that's just on purpose to get as much damage as possible here. This build deals so much damage and has so much focus gain that we just constantly are using our runes, resulting in a lot of lifesteal, and as I mentioned, we're using a jade ring so we don't have any points in stamina. Feel free to take some points out dex, put them in stamina if you feel more comfortable with that, and also you can take some points out dex, put them in focus, but the band of calmness means that the build feels pretty comfortable with only a few points. Also feel free to trade out some purple items for blue items. If you don't have the embers to make the purple items yet, purple items should be what you're aiming towards in the end, but if you can't make them work yet, then just look for some blue items with some of the same sort of stats, like focus gain, damage taken decreased, and also armor increase is a really good enchantment that's actually just exclusive to blue items as well. Alright, and next is a block build. I did not expect this to turn out to be one of the best builds I've ever made, but here we go. For this build, we're focusing on damage reduction and damage on block. Just simply hold your shield up and let the enemies do everything for you. You don't even need to parry ever, just keep that shield up at all times and you'll never die. You might see that our weight is set to heavy because we will just basically never be rolling. It's just not necessary. Alright, and let's start off with a weapon. You can really use anything here, it does not matter in the slightest. I'm just using a blood rusted sword to show off the build. For runes we have spin. Spin does really good damage and also really good poise, so I just kept it in there. It's the rune innate to blood rusted sword. No need to change it really. We have a channel set up with Poise Shield and Damage Surge. Pre-buffing these aren't necessary, but Poise Shield takes me from 28 poise to 50, so with it up, I'll basically never get my poise broken when my shield's up. But yeah, as I said, they're not necessary, but they're really nice to have. We have a Blood Gem for lifesteal to heal up any of the tiny amounts of damage that we take. I wouldn't really swap this out with anything else. I'm running Heating Fusion as the damage enchantment on the weapon, and I'm scaling it via the helm and armor enchants, which I'll go over in a second, but you can really use whatever element you want, or none at all. Nothing else matters in the weapon. Get healing, focus on kill, stamina recovery, doesn't really matter to be honest. An indestructible, unrepairable combo is also probably ideal. Now onto the shield itself, I wouldn't really change any of the enchantments I have here, other than you can trade the unrepairable downside for something like max focus reduction or max stamina reduced. Something like that. Damage taken decreased while blocking, deal damage on block, and poise defense are what we really want. Poise defense, let's say, is the least mandatory of all these. Also, I just want to emphasize, keep your shield upgraded as well at all points throughout the game. Now onto the rest of the gear. We're using a mix of different armor types. We don't really want all plate as your elemental resistance will suffer, and also we would need to put a lot of more points in weight limit. So for the helm, we want damage taken decreased, and then the rest don't really matter much to be honest. Honestly, I was thinking about trading this for a masterwork, which is a white item with 4 gems in it, or a blue item that has like increased armor on it. But this helm's also fine. I just wanted to get fire damage to scale the fire damage on my weapon, but we don't even need to use our weapon much in the first place. And then we also have healing increased just to scale our lifesteal. For the armor, we have a spike as the gem for an armor increase, then damage taken reduced, and burn damage are the only two things that we really want here. Regenerate health is also pretty good for us, but it's not really 100% necessary. And then as usual, we're running an indestructible, unrepairable combo. And as I said before, you can use other downsides as well. Max focus decreased, max stamina decreased are all good options. And next, you'll see here that we're using Masterworks for our gloves and legs, because there wasn't really anything specific that I really wanted other than damage decreased on these items. Like for the helm, we have fire damage increased, and for the chest we have burn damage increased, but there wasn't any specific enchant we really needed on these. So I figured I could just get more value out of making them a masterwork. Another option is to use blue items for these slots and go for increased armor and reduced damage taken. So for the gems, I would use a chipped spike, which is an increase to armor, chipped marble, which is an increase for health, chipped shield emblem, which reduces physical damage taken, and chipped granite, which increases your poise defense. I have a bloodstone instead of a chipped spike here because the chipped spike in gloves just increases your build-up threshold. And for the rings, it's not completely mandatory, but the snake ring is really good for this build. This is definitely the number one ring of choice. And after that, stone tusk ring to increase our armor is good. And then I'm also using a willow cap ring. You can trade out the willow cap ring because it doesn't really do much for us, but we don't really have that many ring options unless you have access to unique rings. And if you do have access to them, I'd say the scarlet ring is a pretty good option. Ring of determination is obviously really strong right now as well. And even Serendipity Ring is pretty good. You can see our attribute distribution on the right here. Technically, you only need the strength to use your shield and weapon, which for us would only be 19. So you could run this build with 19 strength and then put the rest in HP, becoming the ultimate tank. But for now, I'm running with a quite normal amount of health and strength. And we don't really need any stamina or focus for this build. Just make sure that you have enough focus to use your runes in the first place. So if you have any plague downsides that reduce your max focus, make sure you have enough points to still use your runes. So the last build here is going to be a weird one. It's a build for the weapon Wind of Death. It's a really cool unique wakizashi that increases your damage done depending on how much health you're missing. This build revolves around us purposely putting our health to below 50% at all times, using plague downsides in order to get a big damage increase. We can also use all the low health enchantments that are in the game that are also really strong. So how does the build play? You take 5% health every time you deal damage, but we instantly heal it all back up via lifesteal. We're running some overall speed enchantments to make us really fast. We're building around shock, damage reduction, armor, healing for a lifesteal. There's quite a lot going on here. It's a bit more of a complicated build compared to others, but it's a cool weapon, so I just wanted to make it work. So not much to say for the weapon because you can't change the enchantments except via exalting, and you can't change its runes due to it being a unique weapon. You do have the option of either running a blood gem for lifesteal or a quartz gem. If you do want to use a bloodstone for lifesteal, you will have to use electric enchantment rune on your bow and keep that up at all times basically. Speaking of the bow, this build is not made to actually use the bow at all. The amount of lifesteal when we shoot the bow is not greater than the amount that we lose because of our Wind of Death. We're just interested in using its runes and getting its enchantments. So we're using Channel and Damage Surge, both of which you can get from Eleanor, and then you also use electric enchantment in it if you're using a bloodstone in your Wind of Death. And as for the enchantments, I'd say that they're all quite important here, but at the same time, none are strictly necessary. The dodge stamina cost decreased at low health, alongside the decrease from our weapon and our pants, makes dodges almost completely stamina free. The healing helps with lifesteal, and then we have damage increased and the indestructible and unrepairable combo. For the rest of the gear, we're using 1 mesh, 1 plate, and 2 cloth. As I mentioned in the shield build, your elemental resistances do suffer quite a bit if you use too much heavy armor, and you'll also need to put a bunch more in weight limit if you do want to use heavier armor as well. I think this is a good balance while still staying in medium roll. For the helm, we're using a quartz gem for the shock build-up, and then 2 enchants that you really need are damage decreased and electric damage increased. Focus on inflicting build-up and healing are great as well. And then the downside we have is stagger resistance decreased. I just wanted all 4 of these enchants, so I didn't really want to do the unrepairable and destructible combo in this. We're using a plate body with a tiny feather. The feather is just really efficient due to the plate bodies weighing so much. And then all the enchantments here are pretty much required except the item weight decreased, which you can forego and instead put like an extra point in equip load. Damage taken decreased at low health is probably the most important enchant of the whole build. just because we're always going to be at half HP basically. Overall speed when inflicting shock will be up almost 100% of the time, and focus gain is just really good as well. We have a max health decrease downside on this because we need to sit below 50% at all times, and to do this we need the Plagued Ring and 2 max health decreased plagued downsides. For the gloves we have a quartz for shock buildup, and then the 2 mandatory things on this are damage taken decreased and shock buildup. Focus gain and healing are always good of course, and then for the pants we have a black pearl as the gem for healing, but I would honestly rather put an emerald here in hindsight for the stamina instead. And then damage taken decrease is mandatory, and then the rest is just focus gain, healing, and stamina cost, which are really good as well. Our downside is max focus decrease because we can always handle one of these just fine in builds. And moving on to the rings, we need to use a Plagued Ring for the lifesteal to keep up with the massive amount of damage that we're doing to ourselves, on top of if we ever get hit from enemies as well. I would also really recommend a Stone Tusk Ring. We just want to be as tanky as possible here due to being at half life all the time. Then a Willow Cap Ring is just a really good ring in general. You can swap out the Willow Cap Ring for a Band of Calmness, a Serendipity Ring, or a Scarlet Ring if you have them, but I just really like the overall speed. And those are some more builds for the Breach. It's always fun for me making new builds, stepping into Crucible to see if they actually work and then making adjustments afterwards. And speaking of Crucible, here are the full fights showcasing the builds versus Echo Knight. Until next time.